Hello and welcome to part 6 of the series on how to create the Discord UI with ReactJS. In this part we are going to change the navigation bar that we have right here. At the top we have the home button, server, public and download with some dividers between them, and we have some unclaimed account bar at the top of the page. However, if we look at Discord right now, we see that we have the home button, which is the direct messages button. We have an add server button with a divider in between, and we have a download apps button. And if we go at the bottom, we see that we have a discover button as well. The top bar is gone, as you can see, so we want to remove that as well. We are going to open up our code. Then in our code, we are going to go to the home page right here. And here on the home page, we have some classes and also some placeholders. For example, this placeholder right here for the unclaimed account. Let's remove that since we don't need it anymore. And we used a grid for the CSS right here. So if we go into our home.css, we should see that here is also a grid template area for the unclaimed account, which is this one. We can also remove that one. And then we also want to remove the area from the grid declaration, which should be right here. Here we have grid template areas, and let's line it out a little bit better so we can see more clearly what's going on. Here we have our grid template areas, and if we press an enter between here and then here as well, we can see that we have the nav bar on the left side all the time, which is nice. And then we have the unclaimed bar at the top, and then we have top left, top main, top right, main left, main right, bottom left, bottom main, and bottom right. What if we just remove the top part right here and also the top row right here from 36 pixels? And if we save it up, we get what we see on the right side. However, as you can see, we still get a white bar at the top of the page. And that is because we also have a different homepage layout when the screen width is a maximum size of 1200 pixels. And because we are displaying it on the right side of our screen, we are not using the full width of the screen, which means that our page probably isn't 1200 pixels wide. So let's also create this with enters between them so it is more readable. And then let's remove the top line from here as well. And as you can see, now we have the same layout as that we have on Discord right here. Next, what we want to do is we want to simulate, or we want to recreate this layout. So we have a divider, a plus button, a divider, and a download apps button. And then at the bottom, we have the discover button right here. We do have some placeholders for the dividers. However, we have a couple different buttons than what we saw on the Discord page. On the left side, we can go to home, and then right here we have our nav bar, which is the nav bar that we show on the left side. And in our nav bar, we have the home button, which is this one. And then we have the divider, the server, public, divider, and download. All right, so we want to keep the first divider. However, the next button should be add a server. So that's also correct because we have a server button. Then we will want another divider. So let's copy over this divider from here and paste it underneath the server. And as you can see, we now have a divider, a server, and another divider. Then underneath that divider, we want the download button. So we don't want public, we want download. And then if we save it up and look right here, we see that we have the download button. And then we don't want another divider, but we just want to have the explore button. So we remove this one and then we say explore. If we now look at the navigation right here, we see that we have the same layout. However, the explore button is sitting underneath the download button, which is not bad. However, it's not the same as that we had right here. As you can see right here, the discover button is at the bottom of the navigation. In order to do that, we can use a little bit of flex. If we look inside of our home.css right here, we probably have the nav bar. Yes, we do. And here we have a display of flex on it. We also have a flex direction of column, which means that all the elements are being aligned from top to bottom instead of from left to right. And then we also have a padding top, some background color, which is fine. However, what we want to do is we want to lay out this explore button, or we want to align it to the bottom of the flex container. In order to do that, one simple thing we can do is we can add a class name to this button, and we are going to name it explore. And now if we save it up, we can target that button by saying dot homepage nav, and then let's target the button which has a class explore. And this syntax right here tries to target a button inside of the nav component or in the nav element, and then it also tries to look for a button which has the .explore class on it. And the dot just means that it is looking for a class. So right here on the left we don't have .explore, however the dot represents the class name. And class name is also something specific for React. If you just write plain HTML CSS, it will probably be class. So right here we can now target this explore button. Let's try and give it a background color, and let's make it green. If we save it up, we see that only the explore button is getting a green background color. If we remove the explore class, what would happen? All the buttons would get the green background color, because we are no longer specifying that we want to target the button which has the explore class. So we do want to keep the explore class on there. Another thing we could also do, instead of adding a custom class to the element, for example, when you are in a situation where you cannot alter the HTML, so you will just be left with this, how can you then only target this button? Well, we can do that by removing the .explore class from here, and we can say colon, and then we say last child or last of type. In this case, last child and last of type will be the same. The difference is that last of type will look for the last button inside of the nav component, and the last child will only look for the button that is the last child in the nav component. So if there is another element after the button, last child will not work. But as you can see, we now also target only the button. However, this is more prone to failing, because if we now rearrange the elements or do something else, we add a new element, change the structure of the HTML, then this selector will fail more easily. So we can add a class name, and that will make it a little bit more clear so that we know which element we are targeting. Well, we now have the explore button at the bottom and we have it green. However, we don't really have it at the bottom, do we? We need to put it all the way to the bottom. So in order to do that, what we want to do is we want to say justify self, and then we say flex end. And if we save this up, I made a little mistake here, because justify self doesn't work on the item if it is in a flex container. We can only use the align self, as in we can only align one item on the second axis for flex and not on the main axis. If we want to align this item to the end, what we can do is we can add a margin top of auto. So that's also a fine solution, margin top auto. And if we save it up, we see that the explore button is now all the way at the bottom. Great. We can also remove the background color green. And if we save it up, we now have our default button sitting at the bottom nicely. Great. Let's try and make those dividers. Let's see. The divider has a little background color, which is probably the same as this one right here. And then it has a width and a little bit of height, I say 2 pixels or something. Well, let's first of all grab this color, and let's see if we already use this color somewhere in our project. So let's see, we use it right here, 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 and here. Well, we use it at multiple locations, so it is a good contestant for being a variable. In our app.css right here, if we type in colon root, let's define some variables right here. If we define a variable, let's define one for gray, and we assign this a value of this. And that should be the color that we see right here. We also want a darker gray, so let's give it a gray dark, and then we are going to give it the value that we have right here. Let's select it, and then if we assign it here, it now has the dark gray value. And we also want to have a light gray value, so we say gray light, and then we select the color that we have right here. Now we can use those variables in our CSS. If we open up our home.css again, and then let's select this gray color, and then let's look where we use it. We use it in multiple positions. So by pressing Ctrl D a couple of times, we select all the occurrences. And then if we press backspace, backspace, we removed the color from all the places. And then we can say var dash dash gray. And then if we save this up, it should be the same. Look, if we change this into gra, then this won't have a background color. And that is because it now is using this variable for the background color right here. And if we don't pass in the variable correctly, then it won't know what background color to render. So we type in gray and we fix that again. The reason why we did this is because our divider wants the same background color as the gray that we have right there. So in our home.tsx, we have a divider, and let's remove the text from there. Now we have an empty div, and let's give this div a class name of divider. Now what we want to do is in our home right here, let's target the home page, nav, and then we say dot divider. And then we want to give this divider a background color, which will be equal to var, and then gray. Let's zoom in a little bit in our website right here, and we can see that the divider is not showing up, and that is because it doesn't have a width or a height. Normally the element of the divider, which is the div, would have a width and a height, which is equal to the content of that div. However, since the div is empty, it doesn't have any content, so it doesn't have a width or a height. So let's add a width ourselves, and let's give it a width of 32 pixels, and also give it a height of 16 pixels. Let's save it up, and as you can see, we now have a little divider, which is a little bit too big. If we go back to the Discord page right here and zoom in a bit, we see that it is probably 32 pixels. That could be correct, or 48. However, the height is far too high. So let's make this 48, and for the height, let's go for 2 pixels. And that looks already a lot better. We also want some spacing in between the divider, because the divider is causing the elements to have some space in between them. And we can do that two ways. We can add a margin to the divider. So right here we say margin, and we can say margin top and bottom, like so. And then let's give it a margin top of 8 pixels and a margin bottom of 8 pixels as well. And then we should have some space for our divider. Another way we could write this is if we say margin and then we say 8 pixels, 0 pixels, 8 pixels, 0 pixels, because this is actually the shorthand for setting margin top, right, bottom, left. So this would result in the same styling. If we remove this, we see that it still works. And we can make it even shorter by removing those two, and then we have margin 8 pixels and 0 pixels, because right now it's looking at top, right, and then it's looking at bottom, left. There is also another possibility, which is margin block, and not block end, just margin block. And if we say this should be 8 pixels, then we get the same result, because margin block automatically assigns the margin top and margin bottom values, and then it assigns them this value right here, which is 8 pixels. However, this is one solution that we could use. Let's remove it for now. And if we go into our sidebar at the top, where we target the nav right here, we could also add a gap right here. So we could say gap 8 pixels. And if we now save it up, we see that we have a lot of space between all the items on the left side. Not just the dividers, but all the items. This could also be something that you could use. So now we don't have to specify the margin top or bottom on the divider. Now we have said that the parent element, the nav, has a gap for its child elements, which means that every child element gets spaced evenly. Let's keep this for now. And then what we want to do is we do want to center our divider right here. We could do that by giving it a margin left of auto, I think. So let's give it a margin left auto. And then also let's try and give it a margin right auto. I think it will then space it out in the middle. As you can see, we have achieved the result that we want. However, we might want to make it a little bit smaller. So if we go into here, we see that it is a little bit too big. So maybe the 32 pixels were right, as we can see right here. However, the margin left and margin right is not the only solution for this. Since we are using Flexbox, we could also make use of the align self method. So let's say align self, and then if we say flex start right here, then it will align itself to the start of the element. And if we say flex end, it will align itself to the end of the element. We could also say align self-center, and then we get the same result. However, this time with flexbox instead of using the margin left and right auto. Both ways are fine. We are going to use this one. Now that we have our divider, let's also apply this to the other divider. So we can remove the divider text from here, and we are going to give this a class name of divider. And now we have two nice dividers staying right there. Let's also make a start for the buttons. So as you can see right here, we have two buttons, and at the bottom we also have a button right there. Let's try and make the buttons that we have right now at least a little bit more like what they are right here. Alright, so in order to do that, we want to give first of all a background color to the buttons. So let's target the .homepage, nav, and then button. And we want to target all the buttons except for the first one, because the first button, the home button, or the home button, we don't want to target that one. So let's try and target all the direct buttons, because as you can see, this button right here is not a direct button, it's inside of a div, which we see right here. And those buttons that we see down here, those three buttons, those are direct children from the navbar. So here we can say nav button. If we say right here background color green and then go to here, it works. However, it also tries to apply it to this button, I think. We don't want that. So let's add a greater than sign, and then it will only apply the style to the direct children of the navbar right here. So now that we have this, instead of applying a green black background color, we want to say var gray, save it up. Then what we want to do is we want to add a border to here. So we're going to give it a border radius of 50%, I think. Let's see how this looks. It looks already a lot better. However, we do want to give the buttons a fixed width and a fixed height. So it should be the same width and height as we have for the direct messages button on the top. So let's look in our homepage right here, where we have the Discord button. And if we go to our Discord button, we see that the width and the height of this button are 48 pixels. So we also want to apply that to the buttons on the navbar. So here, we also want to say width, 48 pixels, and then also height, 48 pixels. Let's save it up. And as you can see, we now get nice round buttons. We also want to remove the border from the buttons. So right here we say border none. And then what we want to do is we want to make, well, we don't want to display text. We want to display an element. But for now we have text. Elements, or the icons, we are going to add in the next episode. Before we are going to do that, we are first going to align them in the middle, just like we did with our divider. So we now know how we can do that, because we can do that by saying align self, center, and as you can see, now the buttons are nicely centered. Also, if we zoom out just to 100%, which is how we normally view it, we see that the buttons are nicely centered in the left navigation bar, and it actually looks one-on-one the same, with a small exception being that the text is not the same as the icons. The last thing that we are going to do is we are going to apply the green color to the text right here, so we can use that for the icons in the next episode. So right here we want to give a color to the button, and let's start with the color green. And instead of using the color green, let's try and mimic the color that we see on the other page. So if we make it a little bit darker like so, let's save it up. Is that correct? Nah, it's not. It might be a little bit lighter. The reason we are doing this is because the DevTools on the Discord page do crash a little bit. So if we take this, it's like really slow. It doesn't load, it doesn't do anything. So that's why we need to do it by hand. However, that's also a really good experience and we learn a lot from that. So as you can see, we now have the text in that color. This is where we go to end this episode right here. I want to thank you for watching. I hope you could follow along. Leave a like, comment down below, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye!